Welcome to the Black Gems Dive In podcast, the podcast where we dive deep into conversations about inclusive cultures and everything DEI. Your co-hosts are Akua and Kendra, and we're thrilled to be your hosts as we explore the crucial topics shaping our workplaces and communities today. In each episode, we'll unpack insights, share stories, and engage with experts to foster a deeper understanding of how we can create more inclusive environments where everyone feels valued and empowered.
Hey, Kua.
Hey, Kendra.
We're back.
We're back for another episode of the Black Gems Dive In podcast.
Absolutely. It's always great to be on these couches with you.
Right?
Yeah. So we're sitting like this because we have some guests that we'll introduce momentarily.
Absolutely.
Because Kua's normally on my right side.
This is different. We're like, okay, a little cozy chatting.
It's all right.
Today.
I hope you like me in just a little bit.
I do.
Okay.
That's why it works.
All right.
You know?
Yeah.
How's your week been going?
Good. You know, it's raining here in Buffalo, and Memorial Day is coming up, so I'm looking forward to that. But
we'll be together for Memorial Day.
We will. We'll be in D.C., you know, so sometimes we always talk about breaks and taking a good...
I'm actually excited about this break, and I honestly need it.
Yeah.
It's been a really busy couple of weeks. We've been calling it a marathon week, but it's really like a marathon 2 weeks.
First of all, can you tell the people what you just accomplished in the city of Buffalo?
Yeah, y'all. So the last episode, we kind of chatted about it, but we spoke with the majority leader of the Common Council in the city of Buffalo, Majority Leader Halton Pope, and talked to her about, making sure that we remember 514 because this is the third anniversary, right, in the third year since that tragedy happened in our community. And in those discussions, she did put a resolution forward, made it a day of service. So now 514 moving forward would be a day of service for the city of Buffalo. Yep. So day of service and remembrance for those that we lost in that tragedy. But the beauty in that and kind of how we, looked at that day was let's take that day back. Yep. Let's reclaim that, transform it from tragedy into triumph and a celebration of life for the folks that we lost. And, we often think about what they were doing already. Yeah. And so I mentioned how I knew Kat Massey, and she was someone who beautified the neighborhood. She had a pocket park. It's called Inspiration Park on Cherry and Jefferson. And our original idea was just to go do a cleanup there and then maybe do some type of celebration. But, of course, in Clementine Gold fashion, y'all, we did it big, right? Yeah. And so we started the day in service and ended it in community. And so what we did was we spoke to majority of the family members to see how their loved ones would want to be honored through service, and they gave us all these different ideas and we executed it, right?
And it was beautiful.
It really was.
Kua showed me the pictures afterwards and just seeing the smiles on the kids' faces. They were able to just do what kids do and just have fun.
Absolutely.
And then it was great food, great music, and then even with the volunteer opportunities that we had in the beginning of the day, we were able to put together some flowers, some beautiful flower arrangements to go to High Point in honor of Ruth Whitfield. And so that was beautiful, and just looking at some of the residents, and they were just excited to have just some joy in their day. And so kudos to Clementine Gold Group.
Yeah. We still tired from it, but it was a labor of love. And I think, the community gathering portion of that was just beautiful to see, right? We had free haircuts for folks and braids. And so you can get your hair braided, you can get a haircut. We had STEM activities, and we did that in honor of Aaron Salter, who was building a hydro-powered car, right? Yep. And so the kids were building little battery-operated Lego cars. Yep. They made buttons with AKG, the museum. They had balloons, face painting, just a lot of different activities. We did a card tournament in honor of Celestine Cheney, one of the victims, because her son said that that's what she would love to do. She always loved joy around playing cards. And so our whole intention was to, honor these folks in a way that they would have been doing anyways had they still been here. And so it was beautiful. It was beautiful. Yeah. So, we'll have to tag the video or just go on our Instagram page and see it. Yeah.
So next year bigger, and
we'll see, y'all. People are already asking, which is awesome. But it was good.
Awesome.
Yeah.
All right. Well, in true Black Gems fashion, our next segment is the
Diversity Dispatch. Yep.
We always do this, Diversity Dispatch. And so, again, it's just bringing to light something that we've been tracking over the past week. And, of course, we know that there's just so much that we've been tracking. But recently, there was an article in HR Dive that talks about DOJ opens investigation after Chicago mayor touts black hires. It says the U.S. Department of Justice on this past Monday, announced an investigation into whether the city of Chicago violated the Title VII of the Civil Rights Act after Mayor Brandon Johnson made comments at a public event highlighting the race of workers in his administration. He says, or they say, our investigation is based on information suggesting that you have made hiring decisions solely on the basis of race. It says Harmit Dillon, who is Assistant Attorney General of DOJ's Civil Rights Division, wrote in a letter to the mayor. He took the issue with specific remarks the mayor made when visiting the Apostolic Church of God in Chicago's Woodlawn neighborhood on Sunday. So he said several things. Business and Economic Neighborhood Development, the deputy mayor is a black woman. Department of Planning and Development is a black woman. Infrastructure deputy mayor is a black woman. Chief of Operations Officer is a black man. Budget director is a black woman, and senior advisor is a black man. She noted that DOJ had not reached any conclusions about the investigation subject matter and would consider all relevant information. And so it goes on, and we know that this is something that is always highlighted or has been highlighted in the past few months, especially as we start talking about anti-discrimination, hiring quotas and things of that nature. And so this was just a simple speech at a church that blew up into a whole investigation.
Yeah, and I think, there's a lot of conversations around Title VII, and, the article also talks about how complaints around Title VII have increased about DEI goals and how those have ramped up. And when we talk about specific quotas, we know that, like, under affirmative action, quotas is actually illegal.
Yes.
Right? You can have goals, but quotas is illegal. And so, he's saying, like, hey, this person is the leader of this specific department in my administration and they're black. And this person is a leader of this part of my administration and they're black. And he's kind of touting that. Yeah. But he also talked about, the quote was, in my administration, 45% of my administration is black, 25% is Latino, 30% is white, 8% is Asian. And he said that's the most diverse administration in the history of Chicago. And if you looked at some of the other stats, you noted that in past administrations, it's been majority white.
Exactly.
And so he's talking about the diversity, but we know because that has been scrutinized more recently under the Trump administration, now there's more of a scrutiny around DEI efforts. And they're basically trying to say it in reverse, that it's discrimination if you do promote that.
Exactly.
Essentially.
Exactly.
Right?
Exactly. And then he also says there are some distractors that will push back on this. And he said the only thing that the mayor talks about is hiring black people. He said, no, what I'm saying is when you hire our people, we always look out for everybody else.
Yeah.
And I do believe that is true. I do believe that, ultimately when you are uplifting and working towards uplifting the marginalized communities, you're ultimately helping everyone else. And so this is true. If you look at, and we don't have the data in front of us, but probably when you're looking at data and we're looking at just things improving in Chicago, it's probably on the up and up because you have the most diverse group. Working towards administration.
Right. And I think we've talked about that, right? Like, I just did a keynote for a bank locally, and they talked about this program. They have a sponsorship program that they have, and they talked about how by doing that and pairing folks with senior leaders in the organization, now you see this increase in promotions, advancement, because they have this specific program that now links you to the network that it takes to really increase your visibility in a bank like that. And so, to your point, we know that when organizations are more diverse, they're more successful. You see that they have higher revenue. And so this isn't something that's new, but at the same time, because of the scrutiny from this administration, you're going to see this continue, essentially,
Yeah. And so I know that Chicago just released their equity report for 2024. And their goal was to really make sure that their administration reflects Chicago's overall demographics. And so it'll be interesting to dive into that report as well and see what that looks like.
Yeah, and I just want to highlight this one part in the article. It says in an op-ed for HR Dive, Jonathan C.A.L.L, partner at a law firm, Dwayne Morris, encourage employers to go further and reevaluate programs that are, quote unquote, not illegal per se, but which may encourage illegal conduct, such as aspirational diversity goals and programs that classify workers into oppressive or oppressed groups based on identity. And so it says that while not new, so-called reverse discrimination claims have gained traction in recent months. And they talk about how former employees' discrimination lawsuit, because it represents targets, were sufficient evidence that could sway a jury. And so when we have this group that we've been pulling DEI practitioners together to chat about like leveling versus lifting DEI. And so lifting means that we're specifically targeting certain groups and lifting them up, versus leveling is leveling the playing field. And that's not illegal, right? Exactly. So there's different nuances. Targeted universalism is something that we often talk about too, and how you look and survey how you bring everybody up to this targeted goal versus lifting people to this targeted goal, right? So,
and we had an episode on that with last season.
I think it was last season. Targeted universalism. So check that out. But I think all that goes to say, there's a lot that we're still watching and paying attention to as it relates to this reverse discrimination cases in a country that has historically had folks who are marginalized and still do, right? So we'll see what happens on that end. But I think that actually leads us right into our hot topic conversation, and that's coming from the Washington Informer, and it's titled, "More than 106,000 Black Women Lost Jobs Last Month." And it says, Black women experienced the steepest job loss of any demographic group in April, shedding 106,000 jobs, according to newly released data from the U.S. Bureau of Labor Statistics. The April report shows a significant setback for Black women in the labor market, even as the U.S. economy added 177,000 jobs and the national unemployment rate held steady at 4.2%. The number of employed Black women dropped from 10.3 million in March to 10.2 million in April. Their unemployment rate jumped from 5.1% to 6.1%, which is the largest month-to-month increase among all racial and gender groups. It says, among other findings, the labor force participation for Black women edged to 61.2%, indicating a loss in employment and a possible decline in overall workforce engagement. And then that goes into more stats. Unemployment rates for white women remain unchanged at 3.3%. Hispanic women held at 4.6%. And women in other groups generally do not face the dual barriers of racial and gender discrimination that Black women contend with, a factor in the jobless rate gap. And so a lot of these stats are now being pointed to anti-DEI efforts. All this legislation, executive orders that now are targeting, DEI, and who's being impacted by that.
Yeah. And it says also, too, HBCU Money Report reported that the number of Black women employed is now at a 5-month low, while that number of unemployed Black women is at a 5-month high. It says the unusual nature of this increase in Black women's unemployment is a testament to and a direct result, like you said, of anti-DEI. And it also goes on to talk about, for Black women, the numbers show that those seeking work are not finding jobs. The jobs that have traditionally been a path to stability and disappearing. And we know also, too, right, like, a couple of years ago, when there were increased efforts around DEI, we talked about this on a podcast, that a lot of Black women were holding these jobs, right? They were holding DEI titles. I was one of them who held a DEI title.
Me too.
And so that was one of the roles that got slashed first, right? And so we talk about how that Black women still could be influential in other areas within the company and still work on this, again, leveling versus lifting, equity work, all the different things. And so we have to continue to diversify where we are within companies.
Yeah, and it's interesting because the stats also talk about who was most impacted in DEI roles, and white women actually led in numbers around a lot of those DEI roles as well. So to me, it's really interesting to see this data as well as we look at, we're also looking at our stats on education and demographics and how Black women have increased their education year after year and is one of the most educated demographics in our country. And yet we still have these specific issues. And so lots to follow and chat about. I actually think that leads us into our deep dive today, which we're excited because we have two guests who are joining us. And so we have Karen King, who is the Commissioner of Public Advocacy and the Executive Director of the Commission of the Status of Women for Erie County. And we're joined by Sara Taylor, who's the founder of the Women of Color Summit by Elliversity. And so welcome to the show. Thank you for coming.
Thank you for having us.
Thank you so much for having us here today.
Right, and so we want to talk more about the Women of Color Summit. This is the 6th year that it's been happening, right? And so as we think about our hot topic, what we just talked about, and Black women, losing jobs, tell us a little bit about the summit and why you started it.
Well, as you were reading those statistics, I was like, wow, I'm having flashbacks back to 2018 when I actually wrote the op-ed about the ceiling for Black women seeking CEO roles. And that's how the Women of Color Summit was birthed.
Okay.
I was seeking a C-suite nonprofit position. At that time, I was a vice president with a $6 million division, executive coach. I went through the whole executive coach, C-suite mock interview. I had a high level 2 mock interviews with board makeups, deans, attorneys, marketing executives, and 2 positions that I thought I was more than qualified for.
Right.
I got a no. And so I began to talk to other colleagues, Black women that were actually interim CEOs.
Okay.
And applying for that position and got a no. And when I wrote that op-ed, I got emails and calls from all over the country, women of color saying, me too, me too. And when you look at the statistics, not just in non-for-profit, but corporate America, with women of color, Black women leading the way, we also know that we don't stay there once we do arrive. The level of isolation, we know all the data about microaggressions in the workplace. And so as I got calls and texts in the fall of 2018 from Latina sisters, Middle Eastern, Asian, that said, let's do something about it. We're not going to sit around and complain and know we're not angry Black women. We know we're highly qualified. We know that bias is real. Systemic racism is still real. We know that board makeups, particularly of some of our largest nonprofits, no matter how many leadership development programs we have to address board diversity and others, my experience in the non-for-profit setting and leading into that article, we have non-profits that serve 70-80% Black and brown families. But yet, when you look at who's leading them, there needed to be some movement and some conversation about the why. And so we began to convene and have a planning meetings. And I wanted to not make this about Rochester, where I live. And I began, through my role at Elleversity, a division of Heritage Christian Services, began to come to Buffalo. And I met Carlette Bradley and said, Carlette, I want to connect with you. This is what I'm trying to do. We're having this summit in the spring. I want to get Western New Yorkers involved. And then along the way, I met Karen King, a fierce ally, abolitionist, accomplice, who, was in the space in Erie County to also leverage her privilege and partner with us on the summit. So I think it was maybe year 2 around the pandemic that I met Karen through, from Karen Spalding.
Okay.
I reached out to Oshai and said, how can we get the foundation involved with as the foundation at that time in 2020, there were many organizations after George Floyd saying we want to help, we want to do better, made those pledges. But we also know the data of what really happened 3-4 years later. And so we got some amazing partners in Western New York, such as Karen, Dr. King, and Erie County Commission on the Status of Women. And here we are, 6 years.
6 years.
6 years. We're not just convening to convene. It is a professional development opportunity. I want to make that clear. We do skill development on topics, particularly for women of color in the workplace that are frustrated, that want to advance, but don't have a sponsor, may not know how to ask, or may constantly be overlooked and want to stay. We need our jobs. We need that income. But also when you're in a workplace that's toxic and does not embrace your authentic, who you are, it becomes unhealthy.
Yes.
But yet we need our jobs. We want our jobs. Right. And where do we go? And so we have those type of conversations. We also, last year, Stephanie Pete is one of our co-chairs, Carlette Bradley and Dr. Andrea Kane. And we decided that in this conversation that so many don't like to have about race relations in the workplace as it relates to women and intersectionality of gender and race, ethnicity, that we needed to bring C-suite allies to the conversation.
Absolutely. Yeah.
Those that have power and privilege. What are you doing with it? You know the reality in your workplace when it comes to the HR data about who's written up the most, who leaves the most, who's terminated, who does not advance. It's not all performance related. Let's be honest at times what it really is. And so we decided to bring C-suite white allies into the conversation to support this summit as we talk about the career journey. We also have conversations about entrepreneurs. What is it like? You know, those of us that step out in the entrepreneur space may not have mentorship, may not have that contracting background, knowing how to negotiate. And even when you think about minority business enterprises, we also know that is hard to navigate.
Absolutely.
So we have experts that come to talk about navigating that process and so much more. But I can't emphasize enough, we often say we want companies to send their employees to this summit. We don't want women coming out of their own pocket because it is related to their job and in the workplace and how they navigate the workplace culture.
Yeah, absolutely. That's beautiful. And so I guess my question, so Karen, is as an ally, and a strong word, accomplice, which I always say, I love that word because allyship sometimes is passive, but we do need accomplices at the table to accomplish these goals that we were just discussing. And so how important is it to be an accomplice in this space, to uplift the Women of Color Summit, to uplift the communities as a whole? Because once one win, we all win, right?
Right,
so
of course.
What does that mean to you?
Well, it couldn't be more pressing and more important in this moment. You know, this is not the time for allies who possess positional power and privilege to step back. This is the time to continue forward and to be vigilant in this work, because this is the work of democracy. You know, we can call it all kinds of things, but at the end of the day, this is about democracy and justice. And these are elemental values we claim to hold very dear in this country. So those of us that have experienced privilege, because, you know, we're white, we have to access that privilege, or we have to use like our superpowers for good. So this has always been important work for me in all the different spaces that I've been involved with throughout my career, but particularly understanding the way patriarchy and racism operates in our culture. And to my white women allies, you know, there's, perhaps it's unconscious, you know, to some degree. You know, racism is not going to save you from patriarchy. Patriarchy is pervasive and it impacts all women. It obviously lands differently given our circumstances. So we have to acknowledge that. And I think allies sometimes are hesitant to talk about that. But we do have different experiences. But we have experiences that also unite us as women. I mean, if you look at history and the context of the place of women in society, we were second-class citizens. You know, we were disenfranchised and we couldn't even vote until the 19th Amendment was ratified. And now we look at statistics and women are still woefully underrepresented in elected office, as well as in the C-suite. So patriarchy is alive and well. It's been given a lot of steam recently with this new administration. So it's so important that white women and white men participate in these spaces and these conversations because we have to collaborate on this work. And we cannot be misguided by these tropes about reverse discrimination. And I was listening to your conversation before we came in, this idea of leveling and lifting. And we're going to figure this out, and we're going to use whatever language we need to use. But white men have been lifted and the recipients of privilege for centuries. As well as more recently white women. So, leveling is an interesting idea to me. I don't know what it really looks like, because I think that we all come to this space with specific challenges, so we have to acknowledge that. And we have to dive into these complicated conversations. And I just want to implore my white allies to not back down and to not be intimidated by the language. And for some of this, it's real. It's real. But we have to fight even harder, because you've heard that line about democracy is not a spectator sport. We all have to participate, and that will involve some risk. And some of us, I guess, are positioned better than others to endure risk, and what type of risk. But we can't step back now. Now is not the time.
Absolutely.
This is just a really great conversation, because we often, and I mean, I even think about our conversation last night, right? Like, where we were talking about our own experiences as, young Black women entering into professional spaces, and especially in a place, and I'm just going to say it, right, as incestuous as Western New York and Buffalo, right? And so in my own career, I know, Kendra, we've talked about, in your career as well, oftentimes it's not about what you know, it's about who you know, right? Absolutely. At the end of the day. And I think, Sarah, that resonates with what you mentioned early in your discussion around why you started the summit itself, but navigating in professional spaces without having people who can, say, okay, I'm going to invest in you and bring you along that path, is detrimental to your career, right? And so, not only are we excited that this is the 6th year and you're, continuing and making those relationships with allies and accomplices, but I think it's so necessary, right, that we're doing this. And so if you could just talk a little bit about, maybe some of the conversations that are happening at the summit, what are the types of tracks that people can go in, the types of workshops that people can expect to hear?
Okay, so our theme this year is C.A.L.L. That stands for Commit, Assemble, Leverage, and Lead. So we have various tracks about that commitment to your own journey, the commitment to the work. We also have a track for those emerging and aspiring leaders, those that are in the C-suite space. How do you navigate that space? What does mentorship look like? What does sponsorship look like? Maintaining your emotions in workplace environments that may not be inclusive. As you know, we can't go off. As I think it's
sometimes we want to the meeting after the meeting, right?
I think it was Gwen McLeod out of Auburn area. I think she said, cousin Kwee can't come out. Right. Kwee cannot come out. We need our job. And so we also have a C-suite ally. We have had, last year was amazing that we welcomed allies in this space and had a conversation. We have men, we have women, we have individuals of all ethnic backgrounds. We also welcome students in the space. We want our high school students. What does it look like to begin to look at your career journey as a young woman of color in high school, preparing them for some of the journeys, the spaces that happen on college campuses. And so I think in this season that we're in right now, this current climate with the pushback and backlash, it is a very strong call to action. Our theme is very timely, a call to action, and it's not just about coming to network. That's a great aspect of it, but coming to learn and what strategies those of us that are in this space and desire to lead or to desire to advance or even be entrepreneurs. What does that look like? How do we navigate entrepreneurship? How do we know? One of the sessions is going to be about personal branding. You know, you have your professional branding and personal branding. So we have an array of topics, and information is on the website at elliversity.org. You can come one day or both days. We also have the in-person kickoff coming up. And then we have, for those that may be away or not able to get away from the office, later on in July, we have virtual sessions.
Oh, awesome.
So we're excited about just different formats that started right around the pandemic that we continued. The in-person kickoff to get us united as one in a space, energized, and then we shift to the virtual sessions.
Yeah, absolutely. That's amazing. So I guess my question to you is, 6 years ago, or even 7 years ago, when you thought that you were going to start this conference, did you think that it would end up here? Did you think that this would be the result? Especially in the climate that we're in. We've been through, since 2018, since you wrote your op-ed, we've been through a pandemic, we've been through 2 presidential changes. You know, democracy is at risk. Did you think that you will be here having these conversations? How has the conversation shifted? Is it the same? And how do we look to the future to continue to, you know, just become better as a whole, you know, and bringing everyone to the table?
Well, I am that huge risk taker. So this year was definitely looking at where we came from. We had no idea what it was going to be, particularly around the pandemic, as you said. And so the fact that we have an amazing team that said, no, we must go forward, and it continues to grow. With that virtual reach, we reach people from all over the country. And I think this year was definitely a test. Because I'm, as that founder and visionary, we're going forward. But when you have sponsors that are afraid to put their name on it, their logo on it, and when you have committee members saying, do we need to change the name from Women of Color Summit? So there was that level of intimidation and like, what do we do? But I was committed to standing firm. And just you reading those statistics to me at this moment right now puts a fire underneath me. And my motto has been from the beginning, me getting no's to those CEO and executive positions that I know I was highly qualified for. And my motto continues to be, if my no means your yes, my purpose is well served. And we must continue, but also continued unified. When our allies come into space, we often say, we're not here to call anyone out, but to call you in to the reality of the journey of a woman of color in our journey in the workplace. It's reality. You need to hear what our reality is. And if you really want to be an ally to leverage, how can you help? How can you be a better, you know, HR leader? We have HR leaders that are in this space. We need, when you talk about women of color in the workspace, you need HR leaders, see it all.
For sure.
We need them in this space, in others. So it's been an amazing journey. Now is not the time to back down. We've learned a lot along the way, but I'm standing firm on we're not changing our name. We're not changing our goals to address systemic racism in the workplace. We're not changing our goals to help women of color identify and understand the need for sponsorship, mentorship, and coaching in certain spaces along that career journey, and recognizing the importance of sisterhood in leadership is going to be a topic. We have that real sisterhood topic because along this way, many of us want to take everyone with us. And that can't always be the case. You can't. And that's going to be a hot topic.
Oh, for sure.
A real topic that we're going to have during a evening fire chat with that sisterhood and leadership. And so we have women from all different industries, medical, attorneys. We have some attorneys, educators. We We have those that are working on the front lines in nursing, students, small business owners, banking executives. So we have a wide range of industries, and that's what I love about it. It's not one profession or group. It's a wide range, very welcoming, whether you are a student starting out and needing to have that mentorship or being empowered. You may be in the only one, the only woman of color in a management role, and you don't see that roadmap to a C-suite in that organization. This is the place to come for some encouragement, some insight that can help you along the way.
And I think that's beautiful. And just based on our own experiences and what that has looked like in our own professional careers, and then, onto entrepreneurship and being at it alone in many of these spaces as well. It's nice to have a place and space where you can come and say, look, y'all understand where I'm coming from. I've navigated this, so have you. What have you done? And getting some guidance through that, because it is a lonely place and space when you're navigating that on your own, right? And so some of your comments made me think about the importance of allies and accomplices in this work. It made me think about, we talked about the Niagara movement some time ago and how that came out in a time where it was like, men had their own space, and this was, majority Black men who were the movement, right? And that movement went to a certain place, and then it couldn't move forward because, first of all, there were no women. But there was no diversity in terms of allies that were in that space. And so then it changed to this NAACP. And then when you think about it, NAACP still exists, right? Because you had the support, a larger coalition of people that were pushing. And so, Karen, when I think about the work that you're doing in Erie County, the Commission on the Status of Women, you've been recognizing women and you've been uplifting folks in their stories. And so, what do you hope that people can take away from this? And then if you think about some of the bias that, that white folks might have, like what would you push them to do if they're in a position of power, authority, and they do have some opportunities to change and shift things?
Well, first and foremost, show up.
Okay.
Be present in these spaces. Listen. Don't talk. Listen.
Yeah.
And build these coalitions. This work is not going to get done by one group. We have to have coalitions, and we might not all agree, across political lines, ideologically. There may be some differences, but I think we can all agree on these intrinsic values about democracy and justice. So I would really stress the importance of, I know we say being in community, but being present, being in those spaces. A lot of times white allies are like, well, I don't know. And it's like, get over it. Get over it. Shake it off and get in the room, because you have to be in the room in order to affect change. And you have to be in the room to create meaningful collaborative relationships. You got to be in those spaces. And I just want to say, don't forget about Mary Talbert, because you were talking about the Niagara movement.
Yes, absolutely. Absolutely.
She was,
local too, yeah.
Monumental.
Yep.
Not to plug our statues that are located in front of Old County Hall. And of course, Mary Talbert is one of the trailblazing women who's recognized for her work as a human rights and civil rights activist.
Yes. Thanks for uplifting that, for sure.
Absolutely. So is there anything else that you all want to let our listeners know about the summit?
How do they find it? Where they go?
Absolutely. We are all over social media, different social media feeds, but Elliversity.org. Elliversity.org is the website, and you go to our event section. It will give you the schedule, the overview, the speakers, the workshop, the costs. We have group rates. We have all different rates. We are excited to partner with a couple organizations to offer some discounted student rates, because we need high school students in that space. We are sharing the information. I often find individuals like it on social media. We encourage you to share. But again, I often say, and Karen said it too, when you look at our marketing material and our flyer, particularly I'll speak to those allies, I often find as an event planner, when there is a flyer with predominantly women of color or Black women, Black men, the dominant culture doesn't always think it's for them, or rather they think they can't learn from us. We encourage everyone to come. You are welcomed in this space. It is a space of humility and learning. I can tell you, and yes, I'm somewhat biased, but you will not go back home or to your place of work the same.
Awesome.
Thank you.
Well, this is our last segment. Y'all know we got our gem of the day. And so we'll let our guests go first. If you want to give the folks what your gem is.
I think for me, it's really understanding the assignment. When there is an assignment on your life, things will come and go. You will go through different seasons of your life where you're feeling it may be rejected or just unsure of yourself or confidence and begin to question, but really to understand the assignment and keep going.
I love that.
Karen, what's your gem?
My gem is being in this space with the two of you, and just so encouraged by the work you're doing and the space that you're creating. So thank you.
Awesome. Thank you for coming.
I know she's gonna look at me.
Listen, the last couple times I've been going.
I know, so I knew it was coming this way. I think for me, my gem of the day is joy's resistance. I think a lot of times we get caught up in this space, especially now with this current administration and things that are, in front of us, and the uphill battle that we seemingly have to climb almost on a daily basis. But I'm trying to find joy, in the smaller things that's happening in life, from, what Clementine did last week right here on Jefferson. But then also, too, just like finding joy within community. And it's essential. And that's the way that, we're going to continue to get through. So joy.
I love that. And so my gem of the day is to take up space. I think oftentimes we get in these specific roles, or just, you're getting to like this loop of life. And I don't know if we kind of step back to say, what else can I do? Or, just taking up more space. It makes me think last weekend, we actually went to New York for a conference in Tarrytown, the NYPA conference, and did a little sightseeing, of course, afterwards, because there was this new statue that's in Times Square that's very controversial. I think we talked about, I don't know if we talked about this in the pod. Maybe we just chatted.
About the statue?
About the statue.
No, but
yeah, so it's a statue of a black woman who is in plain clothes. She's in the middle of Times Square. I forgot the artist's name off the top of my head, but there was a lot of controversy around why this statue? Why does she look like that? She doesn't look fit, just kind of like tearing it down. And when I was there in Times Square, you would hear some of the commentary as well. And there are people like, it's just weird. Like, why would they do that? And to me, it was just like, yes, this looks like a regular person who was taking up space. And, as black women, I think we're often like playing small or trying to diminish, who we are and what we do. And I think we need to just take up more space and be deliberate and intentional in how we do that. I think last week is a testament to that as well, where we were looking around and seeing if anybody was going to do something, and no one was. And so I said, okay, we're going to do it. Right. And we did. And so I think for folks who are maybe in a season of life or just wondering, how they might do that, just start to do something. Right. That's my gem of the day. Yeah. Do something. Awesome. Well, thank you both for coming on. We appreciate the conversation today. We'll link elleversity.org in the show notes so that folks can find it and find the Women of Color Conference. This is the 6th year, which is really exciting. And so, y'all, we'll see you on the next show.
Yes, absolutely.
Peace.
Bye.